Welcome to the Press Toward the Goal podcast. My guest on the show today played in excess of 200 NRL games, captaining his side for 5 seasons, and was recognised as the 2008 Dally M Lock of the Year and Dally M Captain of the Year. As hard as it is to believe, though, he's arguably achieved more of and had more of an impact since retiring, though. Canberra Raiders legend Alan Tongue, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having us, Jason. And thank you for that kind introduction as well.
Yeah, looking forward to having a chat about everything you've done in your life, both playing career and after you've retired. But we'll just jump in with a couple of quick get to know you type questions. Let our audience know a bit about Alan Tongue off the football field. We good to go?
You're ready to go.
Okay, beautiful. What's something you can't leave the house without?
Oh, wow. What's something? I always take a hat with me. Nearly everything that I do, as well as I do everything in my life, has still got footy involved in it. So there's probably a bag of footies in the back of my car. But there are probably a couple of things that always come with me.
Yeah, very good. Most people say their mobile phone, so that ties into the next question. What's the most used app on your phone?
I dare say it would be probably. I should have a look there, but I've been listening to podcasts at the moment there. I'm not big on social media, so I have got the platforms, but I don't do too much like that. I listen to my radio a fair bit when I'm out and about working and doing some different things. So maybe it's something like that, the ABC, and make sure you tune in if you're listening to the footy there too, especially in Canberra. You might hear somebody on there that you like. I'm not too sure.
Very good. Something that you eat or drink too much of?
Well, I'm a sucker for, if I open a packet of chips, I just can't eat just a couple. I've got to finish the packet, and it's the same with a packet of lollies or whatever that is. So I suppose there's a little bit too much of that, and probably a bit too much caffeine, to be honest. Like I probably could ease up on the caffeine, but even though it might only be 3 or 4 cups a day, that might be still too much. I don't know.
Yeah, what chips are you not sharing if you open a packet?
Sort of anything. I like a bit of chili stuff there too. I don't mind a bit of whatever that is. I know the kids all have that. My wife buys a bit of those what are they, veggie straws and different things like that too. Jeez, I can't stop eating.
Maybe healthier than some of the others, so you get away with that, I reckon. Okay. What would you have done with your life if you weren't a professional footballer?
I'd be a farmer at home with my mum and dad and my 2 brothers. I'd certainly be doing that. I even thought about being a shearer. My uncle and my pop, and my dad's a wool classer as well, but uncle and pop were shearers, and my older brother did a bit of shearing too, so I'd probably be down that path somewhere.
Fantastic. Do you have a favourite piece of sports memorabilia or equipment which you could never part with?
Not really. I do have a couple of my jerseys.
I see those.
Yeah. I've got one. Probably the one that's behind me at the moment is my debut jersey, which is probably something that I do have. I probably don't. I'm not too attached to too many things, I suppose. But that one is probably one that I would feel a little bit hard to give up.
Yep. And sporting hero when you were growing up?
I love Greg Alexander from the Penrith Panthers. I was a halfback when I was coming through, and
no way.
Watching him a little bit as a young kid. As I've got a little bit older, like outside of footy, I've really admired Roger Federer. I grew up playing a fair bit of tennis as well when I was a young kid. Admired a lot of footballers throughout my career, but I think of somebody outside of sport, how they played the game and how they're held in, off the field as well, or off the court. Roger Federer was somebody that I certainly looked up to.
Yeah, perfect. And you've kind of given me a nice segue there. Grew up in the small New South Wales town of Loombra, just a few hundred residents, and footy played a big role in your life growing up?
Yeah, it absolutely did. I mean, for those that don't know, Loombra is about 20 minutes or 25 minutes sort of south of Tamworth, and so it was a wonderful little community. There's a church and a hall there. That was the only 2 little things, and it's all just made up of farming community, people out that way. And mum and dad have been out there. Dad's family has been there for 100 years, and into 4th generation farming down there now. and Mum grew up not far from where Dad lived as well, and she was on a chicken farm, and yeah, my pop was, as I mentioned, a shearer and whatnot as well, and yeah, it was a really, really great little childhood growing up there. And we had farming, we had my faith as well, but we had footy too, and footy was a big part of my childhood. Yeah, being able to, I just hung out for playing footy on a weekend, but as I mentioned there too, we played a lot of tennis. We played a lot of tennis as well in the summer, and even in the winter too. We played a lot, and yeah, that small little community is a real special place in my heart.
Yeah, just from a small country town there, what were the options? Like, was there a tennis court in the town? Did you have to travel to play footy to play tennis?
Yeah, everything was mainly in Tamworth, so 25 odd minutes away, or where we played tennis was Dungowan, which was only about, 15 minutes from where I live. So, yeah, we had to do a little bit of travel there, but yeah, I know we'll get onto it down the track, but, in a bit of my role, I see some kids that, might travel 2 hours to play a game of footy or to do whatever. Whereas, I lived on the outskirts of town, so it was pretty good like that.
Yeah, you mentioned there, though, the travel time, even 20, 25 minutes. It's a big commitment for parents, even when kids are playing sport, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was blessed too to have some families that lived in the area, and even my first ever coach, who I still use some of his sayings in the workshops that I do. He lived even further out, and I remember him dropping us home or picking us up on the way through to footy, and we'd all pile in, and might have been a bit illegal in a few cases there too, but we're all piled in and we all get in there, and we got into town and come home. So yeah, I think one of the great things about small communities is they band together and they find a way to get it done. And so that
Yeah,
was something that left a real impression on me.
yep. Playing with the Peel Valley Juniors, did you kind of always show above average ability?
Look, I think I was always a handy footballer, and from a young age, I was really passionate about it. I wouldn't say I was leaps and bounds above, others. No, that certainly wasn't the case. I, yeah, and I probably from a young age, I had that dream, I suppose, of wanting to play footy. And I've still got a picture actually of when Laurie Daly and Dean Lance come to do a little promo up in Tamworth, and it was after I think it was 1988. I'm only 8 years old, and they've come up after the '87 grand final, and yeah, it was all just it was pretty crazy to sort of see that. And I wanted to be a footballer, but then I actually moved away from it a little bit, and I wanted to do a bit more farming. But I kept playing footy, and it had drawn me back to it at the back end of high school. But I wouldn't have said I was, an exceptional talent. I worked hard, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and someone saw something for you. You say you went towards the end of high school again because you made the Australian schoolboys team?
Yeah, well, year 10, 11 and 12, I actually got asked to be on a scholarship with the Broncos, which I took up. And it wasn't, you didn't need to sign anything. It was just actually previously in year 9, I got asked to have a look at the Parramatta Eels. And I remember Mum and Dad talking to me about it. And I actually said, no, I just want to come home. I just want to be on the farm. And that was fine. That we left that. And then the Broncos approached, and they had a bit of a relationship with our school. And so there was nothing to sign. It was just this opportunity. They actually helped out to pay a little bit of your fees to go on it. Like if you've made a team, a sporting team, they'd actually help you to pay a bit, which would help Mum and Dad. You got to train with the side a couple of times a year. You got a bit of free gear, which was always good when you get a free shirt, isn't it? And so I did that. And then, year 10, 11 and 12, it almost like the bug took over me again. And I just, got closer to the real players and got involved in it. And then I went away. I was fortunate enough to make the Aussie Schoolboys at the end of 1998, my year 12. And I went away and got to know a few of the guys that were actually coming to Canberra the following year. There was about 4 or 5 in that Aussie Schoolboys side, not from Canberra. There was only one guy or 2 from Canberra, but there was a couple from Queensland and whatnot. And we got to make that side. And then Mum and Dad, we had a bit of a look at Brisbane. We come up to Brisbane and we had a look about, and then we came to Dad and I flew down to come and have a look at Canberra. And I remember going, we after the game, we went and watched the game, and went after the game, and we went to a local hotel, and it was cook your own steak, and we met a few of the players, and we did all this. And Canberra was just a big country town. It was just a big Tamworth to me, and
Yep.
I felt really safe, and I felt comfortable here, and I was cool. I was really cool to come here, and it was, people have said, and anyway, you're not to be bitter about it. People said, "Oh, you went there because it was an easier pathway," or different things like that. It had nothing to do with that whatsoever.
Yep.
I felt like it was me. It was meant for me. You get that feeling in your gut where that somebody's talking to you, and I was meant to come down here. I had no family down here. I had actually some family just on the edge of Brisbane that each year the camps I'd come up for the Broncos, I'd actually go and stay with them. So I had some family up that way. But I actually moved down here with nobody to go to, but just a dream.
Yeah, like you say, I mean, it's obviously closer, Canberra, to where you were from than Brisbane, but you're still a 17, 18-year-old kid, probably lived at home your whole life, and then you're kind of just on your own. I'm sure the club puts some structure and that sort of thing in your life, but you are kind of just thrown into this high-pressure environment right from the outset.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember Mum come down with me. We packed up the car and we drove down, and it's actually about an hour and a half further to Canberra than it is to Brisbane. So it's a bit quicker
really?
to Brisbane.
Wow.
So we went a bit further, but the club was fantastic. We're in a boarding house to start off, and it was with not only there was half a dozen other footballers, but there was students at the school and university and different things. It was it was a great little start. And being from a boarding school, went to Farrer Agricultural High School, even though I was a day boy there, but it's a boarding school. It sort of felt pretty comfortable. And we come down there, and the club was great. Got into the team, in the under-19s there, that environment. They were great fellas. And like Canberra was a big country town, the guys were all really fantastic and come from, like, Canberra attracted a fair few guys from outside of the region. And so, there's a lot of us that were in the same boat, leaving home for the first time. And it was some really special friendships there early on.
Yeah. What did you have outside of football to help you to integrate into a new area? Kind of, I understand the football's a high pressure environment, so it is consuming you. It is the career path that you're following, but at the same time, there needs to be another outlet for you. What did you kind of pursue outside of football then?
Yeah, so I'm actually a mechanic by trade. So I actually did a mechanics apprenticeship. So when I first come down here, I started my trade. So there's a bit of a story behind all that. But at the end of the day, I got started in that straight away, and got about a year and a half completed, sort of almost full time. But then I actually made grade. So I made grade in my second year that I was down in Canberra. And so I actually, the sort of last 2.5 years of my apprenticeship took me about 6 years to complete, because I just took, because I was at training and coming and going and different things. But, glad I did it. But yeah, I was able to have that connection too. And yeah, there was people that I met and some friends from back home that I was able to cross paths with that were in Canberra at the time and different things. So I started to build a bit of a network there, which was important too.
Yeah, that's good. You mentioned a little bit earlier, I picked up, you mentioned your faith when you grew up with farming, family and faith, and footy, sorry. How did you kind of assimilate into a church community there when you moved to Canberra?
Yeah, I did. I sort of churched up there for a while, and it probably wasn't until, so my wife as well, she is back home from Loomba and Tamworth there, and we actually got engaged in her second year of her university. She was up in Armidale doing university. I'm down here playing footy, and we got married at the end of her university, and we came together and starting our own home and different things like that, before we really got entrenched into a church group there and a small group and all of that. And that was probably, it's the most important thing, but it was such an important part of, that sort of transition for me. Because, I'll be honest, like, there's all these different distractions and there's different things, and I haven't made all the right choices. I feel that I've made it the majority of the time. I've made the right choices, but obviously there's been some poor choices in there. But as soon as I was really blessed to have my wife and to having a church family around me, and it just gave me so much more stability. And out of that and that knowledge and the learning, my purpose in what I wanted to do just continued to grow.
Yep. And you touched on kind of the environment that you're in. There's obviously quite a masculine environment there, a football team, probably about as masculine as it gets. And, boys trying to be boys, probably a lot of a drinking culture, especially in rugby league, chasing girls and that sort of thing. You mentioned you had your girlfriend, your fiance, who became your fiance. How did you kind of manage that? Juggling kind of your Christian faith in that environment? Was it well received by your teammates?
Yeah, I think it was, and everybody's got a little bit of an opinion, I suppose, on a bit of the sporting rugby league environment too. And yeah, there is pockets of poor culture in that, but I actually feel really blessed to be a part of a rugby league culture, because yeah, there was some people that were doing the wrong thing, and you can get caught up in that too. But with such a big group, you've got to make the decision which direction you want to go, because there was
Yeah.
a lot of the players that I hung around with the different things. They're still my best mates, and it was a great culture to be a part of. And so yeah, but it's a challenge to be able to navigate that through. I think it's the same challenge for any young man. If you were to leave home, you go and work as a tradie on a construction site, you're in a whatever that is, there's all these challenges of what a real man looks like. And I think, footy has been an absolute blessing to me. God give me that opportunity and that gift to be able to do it, because it actually, I really had that understanding of what I wanted to do with my life. And so I would hardly drink at all throughout the season, because my whole focus was making the team. And so I hardly ever drank at all throughout my whole playing career during the year, because I knew that the effects of it on your performance. And so I just never wanted to let that do it. Not saying that I never drunk, but I'm just saying that
Yeah.
I hardly drink at all throughout. And so, yeah, I think that environment actually helped me navigate through those challenging parts of that age bracket when you're just trying to work it all out. So yeah, yes, it was a challenge, but yes, it was great to be in that environment in the same breath, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I understand. I had Jason Fittis on an earlier episode. He was the New Zealand Warriors player welfare and education officer during COVID. And he talked about the same sort of thing about, there's select players, it's kind of the outlier when the bad behaviour happens, but to be with the footballers, but it's the case that the media gives all the attention to. And there's so many footballers going out doing great things in the community, even saying, don't publicise this, we don't want anyone to know, this is what we're doing. But no one cares, of course, unless it's a headline somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just, it's unfortunately a little bit of the nature of society, is that we look for the negative, or we look for a headline story
That's
rather
true.
than to promote. And so it's really unfortunate that that's a part of our society now. And I think it's a bit of a duty for us, as maybe we could call ourselves the older generation now, is to try and somehow change that for our young kids to be able to grow up in a different environment. But you're right, most of the majority of the people that I've been able to play alongside and work alongside that have been through rugby league are so appreciative of everything that they've been able to do. They just love being able to turn up and play a sport and get paid for it.
Yeah.
There's been a few troublemakers along the way, but I tell you what, the better ones far outweigh those troublemakers.
Yeah, that seems to be consistent with what the reality is, but unfortunately not the media. You were known as quite a hard hitting player, like hard working. You mentioned before you worked hard when you were in high school to get to where you were, and tackling machine. I'm a big Super Coach fan, so would have been one of the first picked if Super Coach was around when you were playing. But did you ever have any issues with reconciling the player you wanted to be on the field in terms of being aggressive, quite confrontational, quite physical with the man you were off the field?
No, not really. I think, like in saying that, like I really believe that sport is just an extension of your character. And what I mean by that is if that you're really hardworking and you're disciplined and you're honest off the field, when you cross that line and you go into battle, that's the same person you are on the field. And there's if you think about some of the people that have probably had a few challenges in our game and whatnot, sometimes they take huge risks on the field too. And that's a part of their position. That's a part of the style of play. That's what makes them great. But it's a part of their life off the field too. And so it's their character. It's who they are. And so I think for me, and this is only just me, I suppose. How I sort of picture it is that I'm an aggressive person. When I want something, I go hard at it. And if somebody pushes me, I hate to get beat. You know what I mean? If we're in a running race or we're doing whatever it is that we're doing, like I want to win. And I think and it's still to my day, like I try and let the kids win a few games of cards, but I tell you what, I still don't like losing. I don't care if it's a 9-year-old daughter. I'll try and beat her in But it's something that was ingrained in me about that. I don't know, just fighting for what you do, and I think that came across. And there's a difference between being aggressive and confrontational and being dirty and a grub, I think. And you watch some of the players that I loved, being able to train alongside in my scholarship days at the Bronx and watching what they played was like a Shane Webke and a Petro Civoniceva. Mate, they're the two of the hardest guys in rugby league. And they're two of the nicest guys in rugby league. You don't want to play against them because they'll line you out because they're just as tough as nails. But that's the way they play, but it doesn't mean they're like that off the field. They're absolute champions. And so, I think, if I was hoping to sort of say what, for myself, I hope that I was hardworking and aggressive and, tried to play as tough as I could. That's the way I am off the field, and that's the way it was on the field.
Yeah, fantastic. And you're talking almost about modelling who you were when you went onto the field, and obviously captained the Raiders for 5 years, captained even from the under-19 side. So you obviously demonstrated some leadership potential right through your footballing career, and then going on to be named the Dally M Captain of the Year in 2008. What was it about your leadership, do you think, that really set you apart?
I think, it was really, really simple. There's not a magic formula. It's not something that's crazy out of the box here. Like I really hope and I think that it was mainly through the actions. And I set a goal early on in my career in 2002. It was when I was sitting down with Matt Elliott, and also Dave Ferner was the assistant coach, and my goal was to be the player that other players want to play alongside. That was it.
Brilliant.
And it stayed that for the rest of my career. And so what did that look like? Well, finding a way, to chime in to help out other players, to do whatever it could be to get yourself to the best standard you could, but ways that you could help others get the best too. And I think with a bit of the captaincy stuff is that, like, I would never ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't do myself. Now, it's not saying that, like, I could do everything on the field. That's not the case. But if it was putting the team first and, making your best play at the right time, I hope that I did that, and I would make sure that I'd ask other players to do the exact same. And I think, one of the things that I learned from watching my coaches and watching the other senior players going right throughout my playing career is that is so much of the relationship side of things that you need to build with the people that you're around and knowing what makes them tick. And I think, in that sort of moment, I think was really important. And some people got it wrong. And I learned that through people, doing it wrong. And I learned through probably doing it wrong myself. But, not everybody can be treated the same. There can be a same standard that we hold ourselves, yes, but the way you get the person to that standard can be quite different. And there were some people in, outside and whatnot that, they could have a stern word right to them eye to eye, and they take it on board. But then there's others you almost needed to smack with a feather, and you need to encourage them to be able to get them to that same standard. And so I'm hoping that I sort of learnt that over my time, to be able to help, get the best out of myself, but the best out of others.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I did actually hear a previous conversation you had with someone where you mentioned those individual actions to make yourself the player people wanted to play with. So, for example, the fullback Clinton Shevkovsky, your goal there was to put as much kick pressure on as possible so that he'd be able to get a kick which wasn't maybe so well placed. I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it was when I was doing that goal setting, I went to the head coach, Matty Elliott, and I said, "This is my goal." And he said to me, he said, that's fantastic. But he said, "How do you live that out? What's an action that backs that up?" And I remember going away and I wrote down all the players' names on that bit of paper, and I still
It's
call it my 1 to
phenomenal.
17 story now. And I wrote down all of the players, and Chock was at fullback, and there was Adam Morgan, Phil Graham was in the side on the wing, and Simon Wolford, Jason Croker, Luke DeVico, Kenny Nagus was in there. And I wrote down just one little thing that I could do for them to help them. No, it had nothing to do with, you've got to give me the ball, or you got to, whatever it is. It was just a little thing that I could do for them. And if it was kick pressure for Chock to take the ball on the full, instead of their halfback or 5'8" finding the grass and making it a bit tougher. If it was support on the right-hand side, because Jason Croker had a left-hand offload. If it was putting some double-up shape, some gang-up shape when Simon Wolford got out of dummy half, I did that. If it was just a bit of late support, if Adam Mogg got out of dummy half and wanted to put on some late footwork, I just push up for him and let him do his late footwork and do it. And then all of a sudden, my game just went through the roof. And it had nothing to do with, do this for me. It was how I can serve you. And
Yeah,
I think,
it's
and
great.
it was just a really great, it was a learning curve. And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a magical formula. It wasn't somebody telling me how to do it. I was just learning it on the run. But it was these lessons now that I still embed in myself, but it's been a blessing to be able to use those stories to be able to encourage others because for the first 100 games almost, I was on the bench. I got to play 220 games, but for the first 100 games, I was a bench player. And I remember early on in the days watching the TV screen to just see if my name was on. Am I going to be on the bench? Am I going to be on the
No
bench?
way.
On the bench, you beauty, And it wasn't, I basically played majority of the year in 2005 in the run-on side. In 2006. I got a handful of games in 2005, majority of the games in 2006, and then I was captain 2007. So, from 2000 to 2006, basically, I was a bench player, just a utility guy, just trying to do what I could for the team and just try and get a spot on the bench.
I suppose that's an absolutely brilliant story, but I suppose that we can draw a parallel with our own faith as well, where you weren't focused. It wasn't about yourself, it was about the people around you and kind of lifting them up. And at the same time you were doing that, you just went to another level yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you read countless stories, don't you, of, it's actually the greatest gift is actually to serve others.
Yeah.
And I think I must admit at the time that's not in my mind what I was doing. It was just coming all out. But, what it all has led me to believe fully in my heart is that God's got a plan for us all. He's got a plan for you. He's got a
So
plan
good.
for me, and his plan was all coming together. He was just shaping me through those. You're the guy that's looking on the screen to see if you got a spot on the bench, and you're clawing your way. You're doing whatever you can just to get your spot on the team. But God's just molding me the whole time. God's just molding me.
Brilliant.
I got you. I got you. You just do what you do, and you don't realise it at the time. But when you get onto the other side, you just go, I know why I've been through all of that.
Yeah, you can look back and see. That's fantastic. So you did retire from playing at a relatively young age, and you were really quite a fit player, like you said. Worked hard, a lot of tackles, got through a lot of work during the game. But you decided to retire at 30. What prompted that decision?
Yeah, I mean, I was turning 31 at the end of that season. I still had a year to go on my contract, but I was battered and bruised. I'd taken, especially in the last sort of 3 years, I'd really taken a bit of a hammering, to be honest. I played all of those 3 seasons with some sort of injury that needed surgery at the end of the year, but I continued to battle on. In particular, in 2011, my last year, I got out of dummy half round 1. We're playing the Sharks. I was playing at 9, took the ball deep in the line, played out the back. We actually, eventually off the end of it, we scored in the corner, not because I set it up, but everybody just played their part. But I ran the ball deep in the line to, play out the back, and I got absolutely creased. And I remember waking up, I was knocked out. I was on the ground. The trainer at the time come across to me, said, "You're right, Tungy," and I'm sort of getting to my feet. Yeah. I'm sort of come through, and I'm going, "Yeah, I'll be right." And then he said, "Oh, my shoulder's no good." And he said, "Just let me have a look." He's, do a bit of the test, and then I couldn't lift my shoulder up, couldn't lift my arm up. And he said, "Oh, geez, just have a look." And he put his hand under my jersey, and my AC joint was sticking about an inch up higher than what it was. I did a grade 3 AC, which is basically snapped every ligament that holds that down. And that was 4 minutes into the first game of the season. I'd just come back from off-season groin surgery. The year before, I'd just come back from wrist surgery that I'd played all the year with, and it just sort of wore me down. And I needed surgery straight away, but they said, "Oh, maybe you can rehab it and try and get back and not miss the whole season." And I decided to do that, and I played battered and bruised for that whole last year, and I just wasn't at the standard that I wanted myself to be at. But probably more importantly for my teammates and for the club too, like it was time that there was somebody better to step up than me, and it's a hard pill to swallow, especially when you've got 12 months to go on your contract, you're the captain of the side, you've fought for everything that you've ever got, and then you're going to give up a year. But I knew it was the right thing. And it was that gut instinct, whatever you want to call it. Holy Spirit,
integrity.
Like I just needed to do it. And so it was a big, big decision. And it took me basically, I knew the seeds were sown probably about 6 weeks into that year, trying to come back from that injury. But I didn't say it until about 4 weeks before the end of the year, because it took me that long to actually verbalise it and come to terms with it. But that's footy. We're all going to retire at some time. And one thing I know, that walking away from that press conference when I did do it, is that I left with my head held high. And it's not because I achieved everything in the game. My whole focus right throughout my footy career was to win a premiership with the Raiders. And I didn't get to do that. I was so desperate to do that in my time, and it didn't happen. But I walked away knowing that I'd given everything I could to be the best person and the best player that I could be for the club. And I think if anybody, and I often share that to young people, like, sometimes you put a success tick beside your name if you won premierships, played state of origin and whatnot. That's fantastic, and they deserve all the accolades they get. But success is about you becoming the best you can become. And if you can walk away doing that, it doesn't matter whether you're playing bush footy, whether you're a project officer at the local council and you've done the best out you can be, you walk away with your head held high and your chest puffed out and go on to the next chapter. And that's the way that I did it.
That's fantastic. Real integrity you showed there. I mean, giving up a contract as well. You said you had another year on. It would have been easy to sit around, but good on you. I think that shows the man that you are. Many athletes say that they lose a bit of their identity when they retire from professional sport. How did you kind of navigate retirement?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. Like, there's certainly an identity that you lose after, and for me too, 4 weeks out from the last game of the year, I decided to announce my retirement. I knew that it was sort of coming to the end, and I'd done some education leading into it, but it gets turned off pretty quick. That switch gets flicked off. But there was a part of me that actually looked forward to that. And now to explain a bit of that is like, so you grew up in a small little rural community where there's only a church and a hall, and there's probably 15 or 20 people that go to the church that you see each week, and there's, one bush dance a year, at the local hall. You're pretty used to just keeping to yourselves and, have a few close mates and doing that. The one thing that I always struggled with was, going around and, going down to the shops and, people looking inside your shopping trolley, or people always, like being inside the Big Brother house. I never enjoyed it. It's a privilege to have that. I understand it, and it came with a job, but it's not something that I longed for. Some players, they long to have that still around them once they retired. I could have easily just, went bush and jackaroo and way up in the middle of the territory and just done my own thing. That would have been fine. I was happy to do that. But it is still a huge thing when you've had so much structure, you've had so much purpose, you've had group of mates, you've had, 40 or 50 odd people in an organisation, in the coaching staff, in a playing group, all just driving towards this one thing day in, day out, and then you're on your own. And so that was a challenge. But I was lucky enough that I had my church, and one in particular encounter with one of our youth pastors, which completely changed my direction of what I was doing after footy.
Yeah, tell us about that. I believe that you got involved with local juvenile detention centre.
Yeah, so I'm at church one Sunday, and the youth pastor came up to me, and he said, "Look, we've been going in the Juvenile Justice Centre. We'd love for you to come in and just share your story to the young people that are in there." And I said, "Yeah, no problems." And a big part of me when I retired was that I was going to say yes to almost anything and everything, not just through the church, but through anything. I took 12 months. I was lucky enough, actually, the club asked me to come back and be on the coaching staff, but I needed to distance myself a little bit, I thought, from the playing group. I'd just gone from a mate and a captain and straight into it, wanted a bit of space. And I wanted to have some life experiences outside of footy too. I'd seen the coaches that I had that I thought were, really good. They had more than just a footy knowledge. They had outside experiences and they could relate to you outside of footy. And so I said yes. I went in there. There was 2 kids that turned up out of 25 to hear me speak, and I was filthy because I thought, mate, I only been retired a few months. No one wants to hear about me anymore. But when I was walking out, there was one of the workers there, and he said to me, "You got a pretty good story, mate." He said, "If you had brought some footies in," he said, "you would have had every one of these kids." And I said, I'll come back. And I came back, and I brought in some footies, and I started telling my story of faith, but also my story through footy, through rugby league and doing it with drills and that. And then it changed my life. It just went gangbusters. They asked me to make a program, started up an 8-week program, and it just went from there.
That's brilliant. And you've now working with the NRL. Is that similar sort of thing with the juveniles and the youth, or is that more domestic violence related programs?
Yeah, so it started out in the juvenile justice system with a mentoring program. One of the workers that was at the centre at the time, he took up a youth working role in a high school. I started running. He asked me to do the program at the high school. It sort of spread there. I had a little chance meeting. Somehow somebody got my number from an Aboriginal medical service in Redfern. They'd heard about some of the work that I was doing, and they said, "Could you come out and do some domestic violence work out Central West?" And I was like, well, I've had nothing to do with it, but remember the first year after footy, I'm like, I'm saying yes to everything. Yep, I'll do that. I get sent out bush, and that sort of stirred me up a little bit, that trip, and some different things that I thought could be done better and whatnot. And I'd always just seen the power of, rugby league and the power of sport of being able to make a change in people's lives. And I learned early on that first encounter in that juvenile justice centre was so important to me. The kids, they didn't want to just sit down and listen. They'd buy into a story for so long, but they needed some activity to be able to bring the message to life and have a physical experience and try and put them in that picture. And being able to do that. And so I started shaping up some stuff. I started a violence prevention program here in Canberra, just in high schools. And then the NRL gained some funding at one point in time. They came down and had a look at one of the programs that I was delivering down here. I'd always been an ambassador for the game since I'd retired, just working 1 day, 2 days a week, doing certain programs for them. They said, we'd love for you to come and help us shape up a program that we could deliver to junior footy clubs. And the Voice Against Violence program was started in 2016, and being able to deliver that, which I still currently deliver alongside some other programs at the NRL. But we deliver now not only right across Australia, but in Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Tonga, and Samoa. So, yeah, it's been an amazing journey. But it all started with that youth pastor asked me to come into the Juvenile Justice Centre to share my faith.
Yeah, and it started with you just saying yes to one thing, which you wouldn't have imagined it would have grown like it has. I wouldn't have thought.
Oh, absolutely. And, listening to a podcast here the other day that we're all sort of addicted to this sort of safety net that we've got. We want to feel comfortable. We're addicted to comfort, and, we don't like to put ourselves out. And we want to stick to what's normal and what's safe to us. And it's a natural part of being a human being. But the only place that you can grow is when you're actually outside of your comfort zone.
That's it.
And I think of it like, in a footy's preparation for the footy season, right? Pre-season, they're just, all they're trying to do is take you out and being made feel comfortable. They are just punishing you day in, day out. So you just get used to feeling uncomfortable. So when it comes game time, you're actually used to it. You've been a part of it. Yeah. It's been ingrained in you. You actually, you embrace it, and you embrace that. You actually start to feel comfortable in the uncomfortable. And so that's such a big part of it. And I'm still so glad that I had that mentality. I've got to remind myself of it every now and again now when something gets thrown your way and you're going, oh, should I do this? It's, outside of what I'm actually delivering at the moment or what I go into. But you know what? Somebody's asked you, there's a need. Put your hand up, have a crack at it.
What a great mentality.
Yeah. So, but once again, I've been blessed to be a part of footy, which teaches you that. I'm so fortunate to have that in my life.
And we're just nearly done for time, but how many people would those programs have reached now that you would have delivered programs to?
You know what? It'll be a good little task for me to do one day to start, writing up some of the numbers, but just a little. Yeah. Well, a little primary school program, which I don't just deliver on my own, that I've been fortunate to help out with the NRL, but being able to create. And it started out of my original program that I delivered in that juvenile justice. And we've just made it a more primary school specific program. It reached 160,000 people over the last 3 years. And so
that's phenomenal.
We think about some of the Voice Against Violence workshops. One of the really great things, I got to play a Prime Minister's 13 game in Papua New Guinea. But Papua New Guinea is one of the most violent places for women on earth, and got to start the Voice Against Violence program over there. In 2019, it was actually awarded an International Peace in Sport Award.
Fantastic.
In the top 3. So it's a power of sport. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
I'm so pleased to be a part of it.
Yeah, incredible. And I almost feel like I'm not doing this a justice, just glossing over because we're short of time, but ACT Australian of the Year 2017, that was the profound impact that your program that you've delivered have had. And, that's a fantastic recognition on its own. I'm just going to quickly go into a couple of listener questions just before we run out of time. Question here from Grant Cunningham. He's a Mad Raiders fan, Grant. He says, what drove your passion while you were playing and what drives your passion now with the programs you run?
Yeah, I think it's that service once again. It's that with the programs that I deliver now, it's just, I think of every program that I deliver, I'm talking to my own kids, and I just want, a mantra that we had at the Raiders was that you leave the jersey in a better place. Is that you don't own it, you're a custodian of it, you got to make sure that the jersey is in a better place for you. And so all the programs that we do is just making sure that our communities, our footy clubs, our schools are just in a better place for having rugby league in it. I was driven, I was driven for a number of reasons, I suppose, in my footy career. I wanted to, be the best that I could be. There's something that was inside of me that always drove that. But every time I stepped on that footy field, I was representing my family. And, I never, ever want to let them down. And I always wanted to put them always in the back of my mind. I was always telling myself that too. So standing for them on the footy field was important too.
Fantastic. And I'm not sure if this one's a question or more of a comment, but Ryan, who plays for the Beerwah Bulldogs up here in Queensland, said, you were robbed not getting an Origin jersey for the Blues. He thinks you would have been a perfect fit for that arena. Queensland always embraces a redhead with the likes of Paul Vaughton and Brett Dallas. Is there any chance that your bitterness, or I imagine you're not bitter, but is there any chance that you would switch your allegiance to Queensland based on that?
Look, to be quite honest, there's no way in the world I'd go to Queensland. But I would have loved to obviously play for New South Wales, play in that arena, test myself to be able to do it. But once again, God's got a plan. It wasn't meant to be. And as I mentioned there before, that, I walked away from the game, not bitter, but, knowing that I'd done everything I could.
Yeah, fantastic. Finish every conversation that I have with the same question, and I'm going to ask you now. You've achieved a lot both on and off the field, but how does Alan Tongue want to be remembered?
Somebody who served his footy club, served his community, served his church, served his wife, served his family. And if I can, I just hope that people know that after they've been in a program or I've been able to do that, that I've been able to show love, love to others, that in whatever way that I can do that. If that's, however it makes, whatever impact it has, that's not up to me. But if I just hope that I've felt people that, they're loved, they're supported, and, God's got a plan for them just like he has for me.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. I think we've kind of quickly rushed through, particularly what you did after your playing career finished, but you've certainly served, and the response that your playing group around you and then recognition with other awards off the field says to me that you've certainly have been a man who has done that and served. So, Alan Tongue, it's been a real privilege to have a chat with you. And I look forward to seeing those other millions of programs that you're going to, the millions of people be impacted by those fantastic programs.
Thank you so much. It's an honour to be on here with you, Jason, and keep up the great work.
Thanks, Alan.